The iron bell lay in ruins. Shards of steel still smoked in the square, blackened edges glowing faintly under the floodlights. Families picked through the rubble, fingers trembling as if touching holy relics. Children banged broken fragments with bowls, testing the sound, laughing when the echoes rang wild and crooked. The bell, once flawless, once eternal, once the voice of Cole himself, was gone. But its fall had not brought peace. Wardens marched double ranks through the streets, faces hidden behind black visors, rifles lowered but ready. Cole's voice thundered across every remaining screen. The bell is broken. But order remains. Noise has declared war. Now war will be answered. Jonah stood in the ruins, ledger clutched to his chest. His clothes were torn, blood streaked down his arm from the clash, but his eyes stayed fixed on the cracked scaffold where Anne had stood. She was gone, dragged back by soldiers when the chaos broke. No one knew if she still breathed. Naya limped beside him, crutch splintered, hair singed from the fire. She spat onto the broken steel, voice hoarse. We cracked his god. And still he roars. Carla crouched among the shards, transmitter sparking faintly. Her face was ash-streaked, but her hands moved quick, pocketing steel fragments. Proof, she muttered. Every screen that shows this crack is proof he's not eternal. We just have to get it out before he drowns us in fire. Jonah opened the ledger with trembling fingers. Ink and blood blurred together as he wrote. The bell is broken. Noise rang louder. But Cole still speaks. The city did not celebrate. In the East Quarter, families whispered prayers over the fragments, calling them relics. In the South Docks, deserters lifted shards as weapons, swearing vengeance. But in the North, where soldiers ruled, bodies lay stacked in alleys, bowls scattered beside them. Cole had promised fire. And fire came. Whole blocks were burned in the night, flames rising higher than the towers. Propaganda screens glowed above the smoke, Cole's face calm as stone. Noise is treason, he repeated. And treason burns. The parish, once sanctuary, was now grave. Smoke drifted through broken windows. Families huddled in silence, too afraid to ring bowls. Betrayal still hung in the air, Raln and his men bound in shadows, muttering curses at Jonah. Carla slammed her rig onto the altar, sparks showering. He'll turn the whole city into ash if we don't move first. We need to broadcast, tonight. Show them the crack. Show them the bell is dead. Naya snorted. And if we show it, what then? He'll just burn faster. Truth doesn't stop bullets. Her eyes cut to Jonah. What does your book say? Jonah looked down. The rook cut his palm, blood dripping onto the page. He wrote, Ashes of the bell. Fire rises. Truth flickers. He closed it, voice low. The book says nothing ends. Not yet. That night, Cole unveiled his next decree. Screens across the city lit up with his voice, low and steady. You want noise? Then you will pay in blood. From this day, every family will give one life each week. Volunteers are chosen. A blood tithe. Order demands sacrifice. Refuse and you will burn together. The square erupted in screams. Families clutched their children, deserters swore vengeance, bowls rang in panic. Jonah stood frozen, ledger trembling in his hands. Attacks in blood. A city chained not by silence but by sacrifice. The iron bell was broken. But Cole had forged something darker in its place. The decree spread like fire. By morning, every street corner echoed with it. Loudspeakers blared the command, one life per family chosen or given. Wardens patrolled with clipboards marking names. Families clutched their children tighter, eyes hollow with dread. In the East Quarter, fights broke out in doorways. A father tried to drag his crippled brother into the street, shouting, Better him than my son. Neighbors screamed, bowls clanged as weapons, blood staining the cobblestones before wardens even arrived. In the South Docks, deserters swore to kill the collectors before surrendering a single child. But their defiance only brought flames, whole blocks torched as example, smoke curling over the water. Inside the parish, the air was heavier than stone. Families argued in corners, voices ragged with terror. Some demanded Jonah give himself up as the tithe, claiming his surrender could buy them all time. Others clutched him like a shield, crying that if he fell, memory itself would burn. Naya's voice cut through the chaos, sharp as her crutch striking stone. We don't argue over lives like coins. This tithe is not law, it's slaughter. Carla's transmitter sparked in her hands. Then we show them. We show every family that no one owes Cole their blood. The bell cracked. He cracked with it. We spread that before he drowns them in fear. Jonah sat silent at the altar, ledger open on his knees. His pen hovered, trembling before he scrawled. Blood demanded. Families fracture. Fear chosen over fire. He shut the book slowly, his jaw tight. If he makes the tithe real, he wins without a single bullet. We can't let them choose who dies. Outside, wardens marched in double ranks, torches raised. Lists of names fluttered in their hands. And the city began to tear itself apart, one family at a time. The parish's nave was suffocating with arguments. Children cried in pews, parents shouted, deserters threatened. It was Naya who finally slammed her crutch against the altar, the crack echoing like a gunshot. Enough, she roared. Cole's tithe only works if we obey. Stop fighting over who dies for him and start thinking about how to make him bleed instead. Silence fell, ragged but real. Carla leaned forward, hair wild, transmitter sparking faintly against her chest. We can splice again. Not just show the bells crack, show the tithe itself. Show families tearing each other apart because of Cole's command. If the city sees the truth side by side, they'll know the blood is his, not theirs. Jonah shook his head, weary. Truth didn't stop them last time. Fear always wins first. Carla's eyes flashed. Then we make fear his. Broadcast the names of the families who resist. Show their bowls, not their blood. Let the whole city see defiance instead of sacrifice. Jonah opened the ledger, staring at the blood-stained pages. Noise against silence. Memory against lies. But how do we keep them alive long enough to see it? Naya planted her crutch on the stone, leaning forward with fire in her eyes. We don't just show bowls. We arm them. Every bowl becomes a weapon. Steel cracks, you saw it yourself. If they believe noise can break the bell, maybe they'll believe noise can break his soldiers too. The thought churned in Jonah's chest. Bowls ringing not as mourning but as war drums. He dipped the pen, the ink bleeding dark, and wrote. Tithe of blood becomes tithe of noise. Bowls offered, not lives. Defiance written loud. Carla exhaled, a thin smile curving through her exhaustion. Then it settled. We hijack his lists before nightfall. Families will give bowls instead of bodies. And when the screens light up, they'll see a city not kneeling, but ringing. Naya grinned, feral. And if wardens try to collect, they'll choke on iron and noise. Jonah closed the ledger with trembling hands. Then tomorrow the tithe becomes his undoing. But in the rafters above, unseen by all, a rook symbol was scratched fresh into the wood. The shadow was already listening. Dawn brought the wardens. Their boots pounded like war drums as they marched into the east quarter, torches high, black visors gleaming. One by one they stopped at doors, shouting the same command. By decree of stability, one life for the tithe. Families pressed together in the shadows of their homes. Mothers clutched children, fathers clenched fists, old women whispered prayers. But when the doors opened, no one stepped forward with a trembling hand raised. Instead they carried bowls. The first was a boy no older than 10. He placed his family's dented metal bowl on the stone steps, striking it once so the sound echoed across the alley. Clang. Behind him, his mother placed her bowl beside his. Then his father. Then his sister. 4 bowls in a row ringing against one another. The warden captain snarled. This is not the tithe. Where is the life? The boy lifted his chin. Noise is our tithe. Clang. The sound rippled, windows opening, neighbors stepping out. More bowls struck, more echoes rising. Within minutes, the entire quarter rang with iron. Jonah, hidden in a shadowed rooftop, watched the moment with breath caught in his chest. Carla hunched beside him, transmitter wires digging into her palms, eyes wet with fury. It's working, she whispered. The whole quarter's answering. Naya grinned, her crutch braced like a spear. Let's see how long they can stand before steel cracks. The captain raised his baton, voice booming. Silence them. Wardens surged forward. Rifles lifted. But before the first shot could fire, the bowls clanged louder, families striking them against walls, against stone, against each other, until the sound drowned even the thunder of boots. The wardens hesitated. Even their armor seemed to vibrate with the noise. Carla shoved her signal higher, sparks bursting from her rig. Screens across the city flickered to life, showing not a tithe of blood but of bowls. Families striking iron, children shouting, "Noise is our tithe." For the first time, Cole's decree cracked in plain sight. Jonah opened the ledger with shaking hands and wrote, "Tithe of noise offered." Bowls rang in place of blood. Steel hesitated. But from another quarter of the city, a different broadcast cut in, another stage, another voice. The shadow. He smiled into the camera, rook tattoo burning on his wrist. The ledger spoke of bowls ringing. And you see, it has come to pass. But whose book do you follow, people? The boys? Or mine? The crowd froze, their echoes faltering. And the noise began to fracture. The square of the East Quarter trembled with sound. Dozens of families clanged bowls against stone, each strike echoing like a heartbeat. The wardens stood frozen, their rifles raised but their bodies trembling as if even steel could fracture beneath the noise. For one fragile moment, Jonah believed. Then the screens flickered. The shadow's face filled every wall, every rooftop, every shard of broken glass that still carried a signal. Torchlight licked his angular features, his rook tattoo stark against his pale wrist. You see. His voice was smooth, theatrical. The ledger spoke of bowls ringing, and it has come to pass. Prophecy fulfilled. But remember, prophecy does not lie. The bell broke because I wrote it. The fire rose because I said it would. The noise rings now because I foresaw it. Jonah Mercer did not lead you here, I did. The crowd faltered. Bowls lowered mid-strike. A mother clutched her child tighter, whispering, "Is it true? Was it always him?" Carla swore, sparks flying from her rig. "He's hijacked the feed. Jonah, I can cut him out, but it won't matter, they've heard him already." Naya's crutch slammed against the rooftop. "Then we go down there and shut his name out with blood." But Jonah stood frozen, ledger trembling in his hands. He saw the faces of the people below, their hunger, their fear, their desperate need to believe in something greater than themselves. Truth alone had never been enough. Memory alone could not keep them from bending. And now the shadow was writing their future in real time. The captain of the Wardens seized the hesitation. He raised his baton and shouted, "Noise is treason. Prophecy is treason. Kill them all." Rifles cracked. Bullets tore through the crowd. Families screamed as bowls shattered, clanging one last time before spilling into silence. But something unexpected happened. The deserters who had sworn to fight stepped forward, not with guns but with bowls. They hurled them through the air, iron discs crashing into visors, knocking rifles aside. Children followed, their small hands pitching bowls like stones. The square erupted into chaos, half the crowd crying the shadow's name, half shouting Jonah's, all of them clanging bowls in a storm of noise that drowned even the gunfire. Jonah's breath caught. He tore open the ledger, his pen scratching furiously. Shadow steals memory. Bowls split between prophecy and truth. Noise fractures, yet still resists. The words bled into the page, smearing under his trembling hand. Naya grabbed his shoulder. "You see it, don't you? He's making them hiss. If we don't move now, the city won't be yours to save." Jonah looked up, the rook biting into his palm. "Then we don't fight him tomorrow. We fight him today." Carla's eyes widened. "Jonah, think. He wants you to come after him on his stage with his book. That's the trap." Jonah shook his head, jaw tight. "It doesn't matter. If we let him own this tithe, Cole wins without lifting a blade. The people will choose between prophecy and fire, and they'll choose prophecy. I can't let that happen." Naya's grin was feral. "Good. Then let's drag him off his stage and see how well he performs with his teeth broken." Carla hesitated, then slammed her transmitter shut. Sparks flared like embers. "Fine. But if we go after him, I'm keeping the feed live. Let them see him for what he is, a thief of memory." Below, the wardens regrouped, firing into the crowd, but the bowls did not stop. The square had become two storms colliding, prophecy and memory, both clanging iron against stone, both refusing to fall silent. For the first time, Jonah felt not just fear but clarity. The tithe had not ended in blood. It had ended in noise. Broken, divided, dangerous noise. And from that fracture, something new would be born. He pressed the ledger to his chest, ink staining his coat. The shadow thinks prophecy bends memory. Cole thinks fire bends obedience. But tonight we show them noise bends both. He turned to Carla and Naya, eyes blazing. "Find his stage. We end it before dawn." The square roared on, bowls clashing, bullets flying, prophecy and truth tearing each other apart. And above it all, Cole's silence loomed, watching, waiting to see which enemy would bleed first. The East Quarter still rang with chaos when Jonah, Carla, and Naya slipped into the alleys. Behind them, wardens barked orders and bullets cracked, but the city's noise swallowed the sound. Bowls clanged from windows, from rooftops, from desperate hands striking stone. Jonah pressed the ledger tight against his chest as they moved. Each clang in the distance felt like a pulse in his ribs. He wondered if memory itself was leading him forward, or if the shadow had already written this path. Carla's transmitter hummed faintly, throwing sparks as she guided them through the maze of ruined streets. "I'm catching echoes," she muttered. "Not wardens. Performances." His feed bounces through half the city, but the source is close. Very close. Naya grinned through bloodied teeth. "Good. The sooner I smash his stage, the better." They followed the rook symbols scrawled in charcoal along walls and doors, curved, crooked, mocking Jonah's straight lines. Some were fresh, the strokes still wet. Others had bowls laid beneath them, filled with offerings of bread crusts or coins. A cult had grown overnight, its roots worming through the city. Jonah's stomach twisted. They worship him. Carla spat. They worship a lie. Naya's crutch cracked against one of the painted rooks, smearing it across the stone. Not for long. The trail led them beneath the broken tram lines, into tunnels thick with smoke and torchlight. Voices echoed down the passage, hundreds, maybe more. Not whispers. Chants. "The ledger speaks. The ledger speaks." Jonah froze, heart hammering. Carla grabbed his arm, eyes wide. "That's not just a crowd. That's a congregation." They pressed forward, hugging the shadows. The tunnel widened into a cavernous chamber. And there it was, the shadow stage. It was bigger than before, no longer just planks and banners. Scaffolds rose high, draped with stolen sunburst flags. Torches roared along the walls, casting jagged light. Hundreds of civilians filled the benches, bowls clutched in their laps like hymnals. Children sat wide-eyed, lips moving in unison with the chant. And at the center the shadow stood. He looked younger than his voice suggested, dark hair slicked back, sharp angular face illuminated by fire. His rook tattoo glowed on his wrist as if burned there. In his hands, the forged ledger caught the torchlight, its pages gleaming with ink that looked almost alive. He raised it high, voice rolling like thunder. The ledger spoke of fire, and the barracks burned. The ledger spoke of bowls, and the tithe was noise. Every prophecy fulfilled, every word a chain of truth. The crowd roared, bowls clanging in rhythm. The shadow lowered his gaze, staring out into the sea of faces. But prophecy is not finished. The true ledger says the boy will fall. His memory will bleed. And only then will the city be free. A hush fell. Every bowl lowered. Every child leaned closer. Jonah's blood froze. He felt the rook cut his palm again as if reminding him of its place. He whispered, "He's writing me out of my own book." Carla pulled Jonah back into the shadows, her voice urgent. "We can't strike now. Not with this many. We need to cut his feet, show the crowd his lies." Naya's grip tightened on her crutch, knuckles white. "Or we break his jaw and scatter his flock before he finishes the sentence." Jonah's gaze stayed locked on the shadow, on the way his words bent the crowd like reeds in the wind. He opened the real ledger, ink blotting the page as he scrawled. Stage grown vast. Bowls bent to prophecy. My fall written. His hand shook. He closed the book, chest heaving. We end it here. Before he makes prophecy real. The shadow's voice rose again, a smile playing across his lips. The bell broke and so will the boy. Tomorrow when Cole's tithe is demanded, the ledger will speak again, and his blood will answer. The crowd erupted, bowls clanging like thunder. Jonah pressed the ledger tight against his chest. His voice was barely a whisper, but both Carla and Naya heard it. Tomorrow comes tonight. The cavern's chants were suffocating. The ledger speaks. The ledger speaks. The noise rolled like waves, bowls clashing in perfect rhythm, turning belief into thunder. Jonah pressed his back against the cold stone wall, the ledger heavy under his coat. Carla crouched beside him, eyes darting across the crowd as sparks from her transmitter lit her pale face. Naya leaned forward on her crutch, jaw set, the muscles in her arms tense as coiled rope. We can't wait, Jonah whispered, voice raw. Every word he speaks binds them tighter. Carla grabbed his sleeve. If you rush the stage, they'll tear you apart before you reach him. We need to fracture the feed first, show them his prophecy isn't real. Naya smirked, bloodied teeth flashing. Or we break his skull and let them see what prophecy looks like when it bleeds. Jonah's hand trembled over the ledger. The ink stains felt alive, pulsing like veins. He wrote quickly, almost desperately. Prophecy chains them. Noise bent to his will. Must break it before it breaks me. Then he slammed the book shut. We end it now. They slipped into the crowd. Families pressed shoulder to shoulder, bowls clutched like relics, eyes glazed with awe. No one noticed the three figures moving through the shadows, not until Naya's crutch cracked against stone, startling a row of worshippers into silence. The chant faltered. Heads turned. Jonah stepped forward, pulling back his hood. Gasps rippled through the cavern. "It's him," a woman whispered. "The boy with the ledger." The chant fractured into shouts, half awe, half accusation. Bowls banged, some in support, some in warning. On stage, the shadow froze mid-sentence. Then his lips curved into a slow, cold smile. "Well," he said, his voice carrying like a blade through smoke. "The boy arrives. Right on cue. As the ledger foretold." The crowd erupted. Jonah forced himself forward, each step heavy. The ledger pulsed against his chest like a heartbeat. His voice cracked but did not break. "You forge lies. You twist memory into prophecy. That book in your hand is a thief, not truth." The shadow lifted his forged ledger high. Its pages gleamed in the torchlight, words etched dark as blood. "And yet, every prophecy written here has come true." The bell broke. The bread blackened. The tithe became noise. Who do they believe, the thief or the prophet? The crowd roared, bowls clanging, torn between faith and doubt. Carla shoved her rig into overdrive, sparks hissing. Screens flickered across the cavern, showing shadows, earlier lies spliced with truth. Wardens feasting in the barracks, children shot at the fence and shouting beneath the bell. Her voice cracked with fury. "Look at him. He steals memory and calls it prophecy. He is coal in a mask of fire." Some gasps turned to snarls. Bowls struck harder, no longer in rhythm but in chaos. Naya stormed forward, crutch raised. "Say prophecy again and I'll carve it into your teeth." The shadow didn't flinch. He spread his arms, letting the forged ledger dangle from one hand. His eyes gleamed with cruel delight. "This is prophecy fulfilled," he said. "Even this moment, Mercer climbing my stage, ledger in his hands, ready to fall before the city." He pointed at Jonah. "Strike him down and you fulfill the words yourselves." The crowd surged. Hands grabbed Jonah's coat, bowls raised as weapons. Jonah's heart pounded. He tore open the real ledger, ink smearing across his fingers, and shouted above the chaos. "This book does not command you, it remembers you. Every name, every death, every bowl struck in defiance. You are not prophecy, you are memory, living, breathing, louder than steel." The cavern shook with divided cries. Some bowls clashed in his defense, others swung against his followers. The shadow leapt down from the stage, landing before Jonah with cat-like grace. The two stood face to face, two ledgers between them, two versions of truth. The rook burned in Jonah's palm. The shadow raised his wrist, tattoo gleaming. "Let us see," the shadow whispered, his smile sharp as glass. "Which book the city chooses." For one terrible moment, the cavern rang with noise, not as unity but as war. Prophecy against memory, faith against truth. Jonah felt the ledger shake in his grip, as though the city itself were trying to decide. And then from deep within the benches, a child's voice rose, clear and piercing. "Noise is not prophecy. Noise is ours." Bowls clanged in answer, first a few, then dozens, then hundreds. The cavern thundered, not with the shadow's chant, but with chaos breaking free. Jonah's chest heaved. He scrawled into the ledger, ink and blood running together. First clash. Prophecy met memory. Noise broke its chains. He closed it hard, eyes burning into the shadows. "This is not your stage anymore." The cavern trembled with clanging bowls and clashing voices. On one side, Shadow's followers roared, bowls raised like shields, eyes wild with prophecy. On the other, families who had listened to Jonah struck iron in defiance, screaming that noise was theirs, not foretold. The air was fire and fury, and in the middle of it all, Jonah and the shadow stood chest to chest, two ledgers glowing in torchlight like rival flames. Then came the boots. A deep, steady rhythm, steel on stone, dozens strong. The torches flickered with each step. "Wardens," Carla hissed. Sparks leapt from her rig as she twisted dials, panic flashing in her eyes. "Cole found us." The shadow's smile widened, sharp as a blade. "Perfect. Now prophecy completes itself." The first ranks of wardens poured into the cavern, visors gleaming, rifles raised. Their captain's voice roared over the chaos. "By decree of stability, kill every traitor." Gunfire cracked. Bullets tore into benches, splinters flying, families screaming. Bowls clanged as shields, but steel split iron, blood spraying across stone. Shadow's followers surged forward, chanting his name, hurling bowls like stones. A soldier's visor shattered, his rifle clattering as he fell. Another warden vanished under a storm of iron discs, his screams drowned in the noise. Jonah grabbed Carla, dragging her behind a collapsed beam as bullets sparked against stone. Naya barreled beside them, crutch swinging, knocking a soldier off his feet before smashing his jaw with a crack. "This is it," Naya snarled. "Prophecy, memory, fire, it all dies here if we don't move." Carla's transmitter wailed, screens across the cavern flickering with static. She screamed over the din, "If I boost the signal, I can show the whole city this chaos. Cole's soldiers killing civilians, prophecy turning to blood. But I need time." Jonah's hand tightened on the ledger. "Then buy it." The shadow danced through the chaos like fire itself, his followers shielding him with bowls raised high. He raised his forged ledger to the Wardens, voice cutting through the screams. The ledger spoke of blood in the tunnels, and it is written now. Every drop spilled fulfills prophecy. His words bent the crowd even in death. Families screamed his name as bullets cut them down, believing their sacrifice had been foretold. Jonah's chest heaved with fury. He tore open the real ledger and shouted, "This blood is not prophecy, it is murder. Every name written here is stolen when you let him speak." But his voice was lost in the thunder of rifles and bowls. Naya smashed through the melee, dragging Jonah upright. "If we don't cut his tongue, he'll own every corpse here." Jonah met her eyes, then Carla's, sparks still flaring around her trembling hands. He opened the ledger, ink smearing under his bloodied fingers. "Wardens strike. Prophecy feeds on death. Memory drowns unless carved louder." His jaw tightened. "We end both tonight. Him and Cole." The Wardens pressed harder, bullets chewing through benches. Shadow's followers threw themselves forward like fanatics, bowls clanging even as their bodies fell. The cavern became a crucible, smoke, screams, iron, and fire. Carla screamed, "Signal's almost ready, but it needs one clear image, something the city can't forget." Naya's crutch dripped with blood, her breath ragged. "Then give them an ending worth remembering." Jonah raised the ledger high, ink and blood dripping onto the stone. The rook burned into his palm, but he didn't flinch. "This ends with truth," he shouted. "Not prophecy. Not silence. Truth." The shadow turned, eyes gleaming with fire, forged ledger glowing in his hand. "Then step forward, boy. Let the city choose which book bleeds." The Wardens closed in, rifles aimed at both. And the cavern, already deafened by bowls, waited for its judgment. Rifles cracked, bowls rang, screams tore through smoke. The benches were overturned, flames licking the walls as torches spilled. Wardens pressed in with steel precision, firing into the crowd, while Shadow's followers hurled bowls like stones, shrieking his name. Between them, Jonah's people clung to defiance, their noise raw, desperate, but alive. And on the broken stage, Jonah and the Shadow finally collided. Jonah charged forward, the ledger clutched to his chest. The Shadow met him with a grin, swinging the forged ledger like a weapon. Their books clashed with a hollow thud, leather against leather, prophecy against memory. The crowd gasped. To them, it looked like two prophets dueling with holy texts, the city's fate bound in the swing of every page. "You carry a curse," the Shadow hissed, pressing Jonah back. "Every name written in your book is death. I give them prophecy, meaning. That is why they love me." Jonah snarled, blood dripping from his palm onto the ledger's spine. "You steal their lives and call it destiny. But memory doesn't need love, it needs truth." He shoved forward, slamming his book into the Shadow's chest. The man staggered, his smirk faltering for a heartbeat. Below the stage, Carla twisted dials furiously, sparks leaping as her rig caught the clash. The feed flickered, screens across the city coming alive. People in every quarter saw it, the boy and the Shadow locked in combat, their ledgers colliding beneath the firelight. Carla shouted, voice breaking with exhaustion. "Hold him there, Jonah. The city's watching." Naya battered a warden with her crutch, blood spraying across her scarred face. "Make it count." The Shadow recovered, laughter spilling from his lips even as blood ran from his mouth. He raised his forged ledger high. "You see? Even this duel was foretold. The ledger speaks of a boy bleeding beneath the bell's echo, and here he is." He swung the book like a hammer, cracking across Jonah's jaw. Jonah reeled, blood spraying, nearly falling. The crowd howled, some in awe, others in rage. Jonah wiped blood from his mouth, eyes blazing. He opened the real ledger and shouted for all to hear. "The Shadow lies. These pages are no prophecy. They are names, your names, stolen to chain you. Every death, every scream, every bowl struck is yours, not his." He thrust the open book toward the crowd. Ink-stained pages gleamed, filled with names scrawled by trembling hands, bloodstains marring the margins. "This is not destiny, it is memory." For the first time the crowd faltered. Bowls lowered. Mothers clutched children tighter, whispering at the sight of their loved ones' names written plain, not as prophecy but as truth. Carla seized the moment, rerouting the feed. The screen above the stage flickered, showing not the shadow's fiery speeches but Jonah's blood-stained ledger, names etched in ink and pain. "See it?" Carla screamed into her rig. "Every page is you, not prophecy, not magic, not his lies. You live in memory, not his mouth." The shadow's smirk broke. Rage twisted his features. He lunged at Jonah, slamming him to the stage. The forged ledger fell, pages scattering across the firelit floor. Some landed in the blood pooling at their feet, the ink running into unreadable blurs. Jonah grappled, forcing the shadow back, their hands straining over the real ledger. The rook in Jonah's palm sliced deep, blood pouring down his wrist. "Let go," the shadow snarled. "Or the city dies with you." Jonah's eyes locked on his. "Then it dies remembering." He smashed the rook-stained hand across the shadow's face. Blood splattered, teeth cracked. The crowd gasped, prophet bleeding before their eyes. Carla's rig screamed. The feed surged citywide, every screen filled with the image. The shadow broken, his forged ledger scattered, Jonah holding the real one aloft, blood and ink dripping together. In the East Quarter, bowls clanged in defiance. In the docks, deserters cheered. Even in the North, families whispered as soldiers watched nervously. Carla's voice cut across the feed, harsh and raw. "Noise belongs to the people, not prophets. Not fire. Not lies." Wardens roared, charging the stage, rifles raised. Bullets tore through the air. Naya leapt up the steps, crutch whistling, smashing a soldier across the skull. She planted herself at Jonah's side, bloodied and grinning. "Looks like they didn't like the sermon." Jonah raised the ledger high, voice breaking but defiant. "This is not prophecy, it is ours." The cavern thundered with bowls. But in the chaos, the shadow slipped into the smoke, clutching his broken jaw, blood streaking his face. His eyes burned with hate. "This isn't over," he hissed. "Prophecy always returns." Then he vanished into the tunnels, leaving only his scattered pages burning on the stage. Jonah collapsed to his knees, ledger pressed tight to his chest. Blood and ink dripped onto the stone. He scrawled with shaking hands. "First blow struck. Lies broken. City saw. But shadow lives." He closed the book, chest heaving. The cavern still roared with bowls, but he knew the battle was not won. It had only begun. Rifles cracked, bowls rang, screams tore through smoke. The benches were overturned, flames licking the walls as torches spilled. Wardens pressed in with steel precision, firing into the crowd, while Shadow's followers hurled bowls like stones, shrieking his name. Between them, Jonah's people clung to defiance, their noise raw, desperate, but alive. And on the broken stage, Jonah and the Shadow finally collided. Jonah charged forward, the ledger clutched to his chest. The Shadow met him with a grin, swinging the forged ledger like a weapon. Their books clashed with a hollow thud, leather against leather, prophecy against memory. The crowd gasped. To them, it looked like two prophets dueling with holy texts, the city's fate bound in the swing of every page. "You carry a curse," the Shadow hissed, pressing Jonah back. "Every name written in your book is death. I give them prophecy, meaning. That is why they love me." Jonah snarled, blood dripping from his palm onto the ledger's spine. "You steal their lives and call it destiny. But memory doesn't need love, it needs truth." He shoved forward, slamming his book into the Shadow's chest. The man staggered, his smirk faltering for a heartbeat. Below the stage, Carla twisted dials furiously, sparks leaping as her rig caught the clash. The feed flickered, screens across the city coming alive. People in every quarter saw it. The boy and the Shadow locked in combat, their ledgers colliding beneath the firelight. Carla shouted, voice breaking with exhaustion. "Hold him there, Jonah. The city's watching." Naya battered a warden with her crutch, blood spraying across her scarred face. "Make it count." The Shadow recovered, laughter spilling from his lips even as blood ran from his mouth. He raised his forged ledger high. "You see? Even this duel was foretold. The ledger speaks of a boy bleeding beneath the bell's echo, and here he is." He swung the book like a hammer, cracking across Jonah's jaw. Jonah reeled, blood spraying, nearly falling. The crowd howled, some in awe, others in rage. Jonah wiped blood from his mouth, eyes blazing. He opened the real ledger and shouted for all to hear. "The Shadow lies. These pages are no prophecy. They are names, your names, stolen to chain you. Every death, every scream, Every bowl struck is yours, not his. He thrust the open book toward the crowd. Ink-stained pages gleamed, filled with names scrawled by trembling hands, bloodstains marring the margins. This is not destiny, it is memory. For the first time the crowd faltered. Bowls lowered. Mothers clutched children tighter, whispering at the sight of their loved ones' names written plain, not as prophecy but as truth. Carla seized the moment, rerouting the feed. The screen above the stage flickered, showing not the shadow's fiery speeches but Jonah's blood-stained ledger, names etched in ink and pain. See it? Carla screamed into her rig. Every page is you, not prophecy, not magic, not his lies. You live in memory, not his mouth. The shadow's smirk broke. Rage twisted his features. He lunged at Jonah, slamming him to the stage. The forged ledger fell, pages scattering across the firelit floor. Some landed in the blood pooling at their feet, the ink running into unreadable blurs. Jonah grappled, forcing the shadow back, their hands straining over the real ledger. The rook in Jonah's palm sliced deep, blood pouring down his wrist. Let go, the shadow snarled. Or the city dies with you. Jonah's eyes locked on his. Then it dies remembering. He smashed the rook-stained hand across the shadow's face. Blood splattered, teeth cracked. The crowd gasped, prophet bleeding before their eyes. Carla's rig screamed. The feed surged citywide, every screen filled with the image. The shadow broken, his forged ledger scattered, Jonah holding the real one aloft, blood and ink dripping together. In the East Quarter, bowls clanged in defiance. In the docks, deserters cheered. Even in the North, families whispered as soldiers watched nervously. Carla's voice cut across the feed, harsh and raw. Noise belongs to the people, not prophets. Not fire. Not lies. Wardens roared, charging the stage, rifles raised. Bullets tore through the air. Naya leapt up the steps, crutch whistling, smashing a soldier across the skull. She planted herself at Jonah's side, bloodied and grinning. Looks like they didn't like the sermon. Jonah raised the ledger high, voice breaking but defiant. This is not prophecy, it is ours. The cavern thundered with bowls. But in the chaos, the shadow slipped into the smoke, clutching his broken jaw, blood streaking his face. His eyes burned with hate. This isn't over, he hissed. Prophecy always returns. Then he vanished into the tunnels, leaving only his scattered pages burning on the stage. Jonah collapsed to his knees, ledger pressed tight to his chest. Blood and ink dripped onto the stone. He scrawled with shaking hands. First blow struck. Lies broken. City saw. But shadow lives. He closed the book, chest heaving. The cavern still roared with bowls, but he knew the battle was not won. It had only begun. The tunnel spat them out like broken bones. Jonah stumbled into the pale glow of lanterns, blood dripping from his jaw, ledger clutched to his chest as if it were the last heartbeat of the city. Behind him, Naya hobbled on her splintered crutch, one arm wrapped around Carla whose rig smoked and hissed with every step. Survivors staggered in ragged clusters, coughing, eyes wide, faces masked in soot. The cavern's collapse still echoed down the stone, a groaning wound in the earth. Dust clouded the air, settling on their shoulders like gray ash. No one spoke at first. Only the bowls, dented, blood-stained, clanged faintly as they were dropped, one by one, onto the tunnel floor. Jonah forced his breath steady, though every rib screamed. He opened the ledger with shaking hands. Its pages were warped, edges scorched, but the names remained. His blood still streaked the margins, sealing truth into memory. "We're alive," Carla whispered, voice hoarse, though her eyes burned with disbelief. "After all that, we're still alive." Naya spat into the dust, jaw tight. "Alive doesn't win wars. The shadow still breathes and the bell still rings." Her words settled like a blade across them all. The survivors bowed heads, some clutching wounds, others clutching children who had followed them into smoke. The victory in the cavern had tasted sweet for a moment, but now only bitterness lingered. Jonah closed the ledger slowly. "We showed the city the truth. They saw the names. They heard the noise. That seed is planted. Even the bell can't rip that out by its roots." Naya's scarred face twisted. "Seeds don't matter if the soil burns. And the shadow will burn it all." Carla's hands trembled as she held the rig close, sparks biting her skin. "Then we give them more. More memory. More names. Every time he tolls the bell we answer with pages. Noise can shake walls, but words last longer than stone." Jonah met her eyes, then Naya's. In their exhaustion he saw the same thing he carried in his chest. Fear, yes, but also something harder. A refusal to vanish. He drew a line of blood across the ledger's margin, marking the night. Then we swear it. Here. On ash and blood. The survivors shifted, watching. Some knelt, others stood swaying on weak legs. The bowls lay scattered around them, dull in the lantern light. Jonah raised the ledger high, voice ragged but strong. We swear no silence. No prophet will own our names. Not the shadow. Not the bell. We are memory, and memory endures. One by one voices answered. Memory endures. Carla's voice cracked, but she shouted it anyway. Naya's scar twisted into a grin as she slammed her crutch against the stone, echoing the vow. The tunnels carried it outward into the city's veins. For a heartbeat, the vow felt heavier than the cavern's collapse. It felt like something unbreakable. But then a new sound cut through, boots marching. Jonah's head snapped up. Lantern light flickered across helmets as a fresh wave of wardens poured down the far tunnel. Their uniforms were unburned, rifles gleaming. At their front marched an officer in iron gray, metals shining even in the gloom. His voice rang with ruthless command. By order of the Iron Hand, all insurgents are condemned. Lay down arms and ledgers, or be buried where you stand. The survivors froze. Carla clutched her rig tighter. Naya spat again, but her hand trembled on her crutch. Jonah felt the ledger's weight grow unbearable in his palm. The Iron Hand. The council's enforcer. No longer shadows, no longer wardens, they had sent their hammer. The officer raised his hand. Rifles lifted, bayonets gleaming in lantern light. Jonah took one step forward, ledger against his chest. His legs shook, his jaw still bled, but his voice rose above the officer's command. You can bury bodies, but not names. He opened the ledger wide. Blood and ink gleamed under the lanterns, every page a testament. The city saw tonight. You can kill us here, but they will remember who pulled the trigger. The officer's jaw clenched. His soldiers faltered, hesitation flickering across young faces. Memory was already spreading, Jonah realized, names echoing in whispers even within the ranks sworn to silence. The officer drew his pistol, aiming square at Jonah's heart. Then let the first name be yours. Time slowed. Survivors gasped. Carla screamed. Naya lurched forward with her crutch. But before the shot rang out, the tunnel itself shook with a distant blast. Dust cascaded from the ceiling. The officer staggered, lowering his gun instinctively. From deeper in the tunnels came a howl, low, terrible, carried by fire and smoke. The shadow's voice, ragged with blood but unbroken. You see? Even your vows were foretold. Even your ash is mine. The bell tolls again. The bell thundered once more, shaking stone, drowning lungs. Jonah clutched the ledger tight, even as his knees buckled. His blood smeared across its pages as he scrawled through the tremors. Shadow rises in ruin. Iron Hand descends. But memory holds. The oath had been sworn. The war had found its iron teeth. And Jonah knew, the next blow would not be in secret tunnels. It would be in the city's heart. The tunnels could no longer hold the war. Jonah stumbled into the night, the ledger clutched to his ribs, his blood smearing fresh across its pages. Behind him, Carla half carried her ruined rig, sparks dripping from the coils. Naya limped, crutch scraping stone, eyes blazing with fury. Survivors spilled out into the east quarter streets, coughing dust, their bowls clanging as they dragged them along like war drums. The city was waiting. Screens still flickered on every corner, patched through Carla's failing rig. The crowd that had gathered, dockworkers, mothers, deserters, saw Jonah emerge from the smoke. They saw his ledger raised high, its pages bloody but unburned. A ripple of sound rose, bowls clanging, fists pounding walls, voices chanting his name. But then the Iron Hand marched. Columns of soldiers in gray surged from the northern avenues, their boots pounding in unison. Their officer strode at the front, pistol raised, voice cutting through the chants. By decree of the council, this rebellion ends tonight. Lay down your noise, or be crushed beneath the Iron Hand. Silence threatened to fall. Mothers pulled children back. Dockworkers froze, their bowls trembling in their hands. Soldiers' rifles gleamed in the torchlight, a wall of steel and order. Jonah's chest burned, but he forced himself forward into the open street. He raised the ledger high, blood dripping across its cover. You want silence? Then strike me here. But every name you erase, every shot you fire will carve itself into these pages. The city will remember, long after your medals turn to rust. His voice cracked, but the screens carried it across districts. People in markets and barracks leaned forward, listening. The bell tolled faintly in the distance, its echo like a sneer. The officer's jaw tightened. Memory is nothing against steel. He raised his pistol. Naya stepped forward, planting herself at Jonah's side. Her crutch thudded against the cobblestones. Then steel will learn fear of names. She turned, shouting to the crowd, "Bowls up! Strike until your hands bleed." The East Quarter obeyed. Bowls lifted high, steel against wood, iron against stone. The street thundered, drowning even the bell's toll. The officer fired. Jonah staggered back, pain ripping across his shoulder. Blood soaked his sleeve, dripping onto the ledger. Gasps tore through the crowd. The officer leveled his pistol again, calm, merciless. But this time rifles wavered. Soldiers' eyes darted to the screens, where Jonah's bloodied face filled every corner, where names written in the ledger glowed in the lamplight. Some rifles lowered. One clattered to the ground. "Don't listen," the officer barked. "The bell speaks truth. This boy is a lie." As if summoned, the bell tolled louder, shaking windows, rattling lanterns. The shadow's voice followed, ragged but triumphant. "You see? Even his wound was foretold. He bleeds where prophecy said he would. His ledger is mine, his noise already written." Fear surged through the crowd. Bowls faltered. Mothers clutched children tighter. Soldiers steadied rifles. Jonah swayed, blood dripping. For a moment, the shadow's words pressed heavy, undeniable. But Carla staggered forward, her rig sparking wildly. She slammed it onto the cobblestones, wires hissing. Screens across the city blazed, not with the shadow's speeches, not with the bell, but with the pages of the ledger. Names glowed, ink and blood shimmering together. Carla screamed, her voice breaking through the chaos. "Look! These are your names, not his prophecy. Your mothers, your sons, your dead and your living. This is memory, it cannot be stolen." The crowd roared. Bowls struck harder. Sparks flew as steel bowls smashed against cobblestones, each strike a defiance louder than the bell. The officer aimed again, but Naya's crutch whipped across his wrist. The pistol clattered to the stones. Dockworkers surged forward, bowls raised like weapons, smashing into the gray line of soldiers. Rifles fired, screams split the night, but the East Quarter did not scatter. They struck and struck again. Jonah forced himself upright, ledger high. His voice, though torn with blood, rose above the fire. "This city belongs to its people. Not to prophets. Not to iron hands. Not to lies." The bell tolled once more, but this time it sounded weaker, drowned in the clamor of bowls, chants, and defiance. The officer was dragged into the chaos, swallowed by fists and bowls. Soldiers broke rank, some fleeing, others tearing insignias from their chests as deserters. The Iron Hands line collapsed into smoke and screams. Jonah fell to his knees in the center of it all, ledger pressed to his chest. He scrawled with his bleeding hand, words jagged but unbreakable. Bell tolled. Iron struck. But city answered. Memory louder. Naya crouched beside him, blood smeared across her face but a grin splitting her scar. "You just broke the iron hand." Carla dropped to her knees, cradling the sparking rig, tears streaking soot across her cheeks. "No. We only lit the fire. Now it burns across the whole city." Above them the night filled with bowls. The East Quarter thundered. The docks echoed back. Even the North began to stir. The war was no longer hidden in tunnels. It had reached the city's heart. And from the shadows, watching with his broken jaw bound in cloth, the shadow smiled through blood. His eyes burned with promise. "This isn't the end," he whispered to the bell. "It is only the prophecy fulfilled." The bell answered, tolling deep into the night, a challenge cast across the city. The city did not sleep that night. From the East Quarter to the docks, bowls thundered against walls and cobblestones. Every strike was a defiance, every name shouted into the dark a rejection of silence. Jonah's blood-soaked ledger had become more than a book, it was a banner. The people saw their names written there, and for the first time in years, they believed that memory could outlast fear. But the shadow was not gone. Hidden in the black veins of the tunnels, he pressed cloth to his broken jaw, the taste of iron thick on his tongue. The firelight from above flickered across his scattered pages, fragments of his forged ledger, now smeared with soot and blood. He gathered them with trembling hands, holding each ruined scrap as if it were scripture. The bell tolled once, deep and heavy. He closed his eyes, letting the vibration roll through his ribs. "They think memory saves them," he whispered. His voice rasped, broken, but a smile bent across his bloodied lips. "But prophecy is not paper. It is echo. And echo always returns." His followers, cloaked in smoke and ash, knelt around him. Some bled from shattered bowls, others from bullet wounds, but their eyes never wavered. To them, his broken jaw was not defeat, it was sacrifice, fulfillment of a verse written long before. "Rise," he commanded. "The city believes it has broken the iron hand. Let them taste triumph. Let them raise bowls." And then, he raised a shard of his forged ledger, ink smeared like blood. "We turn their memory into prophecy. Their noise into my echo." The bell tolled again, louder this time. Above ground, Jonah staggered through the streets, supported by Naya and Carla. His shoulder burned, every breath a blade, but he refused to let the ledger drop. Around him, the East Quarter had erupted into a carnival of defiance. Fires blazing in braziers, bowls clanging in rhythm, children chanting his name like a song. Naya spat blood and grinned. "You see? They're with us now. The iron hand cracked tonight." Carla adjusted her rig, sparks still leaping from its ruined coils. But the bell still ringing. "He's not finished." Jonah's face hardened. "Then neither are we." He raised the ledger, blood dripping across the cover. "As long as one page remains, so does memory." The crowd cheered, bowls thundered. But in the distance, another sound began to grow. A chant. Low at first, carried on the night wind. Then louder. Then multiplied, echoing from alleys and rooftops. "Prophecy returns. Prophecy returns." The noise cut through the rhythm of bowls like a blade. People faltered, glancing over shoulders. Some lowered their bowls, faces pale. Jonah froze. He knew that voice, even distorted by smoke and speakers hidden across the city. The shadow was speaking again. In the tunnels, the shadow's followers dragged huge metal horns into place, ancient relics of the bell's network, long buried but never destroyed. Smoke curled around them as they connected wires, sparks lighting the dark. The shadow leaned close, his voice spilling like poison into the channels. "You saw him bleed. You saw him fall. The ledger is no memory, it is prophecy, and it has spoken. His wound, his collapse, his blood upon the stone, it was all written." The bell tolled, punctuating his words, shaking glass across the city. Crowds faltered. Some who had cheered Jonah now whispered in fear. Mothers pulled children back from the firelight. Soldiers in the north straightened, eyes darting to their commanders. Naya slammed her crutch against the stones, shouting, "Don't listen. He twists what you saw." But doubt spread faster than defiance. The bowls struck softer, some falling silent altogether. Jonah felt the weight of every gaze turned back to him. His chest ached, his blood dripped steadily, and the ledger felt heavier than iron. Carla grabbed his arm. "You have to speak. Now. Before he drowns them again." Jonah raised the ledger, voice cracking but fierce. "The shadow lies. These pages were written by your hands, not his. Your names, your blood, your screams, memory, not prophecy." For a heartbeat, bowls clanged louder again. But then the bell thundered, shaking the earth, and the shadow's voice returned, deeper, triumphant. "Then why does he bleed where the ledger foretold? Why does he fall where the bell decreed? Every drop of his blood proves prophecy, not memory." The city gasped. All eyes returned to Jonah, bloodied, staggering, wounded exactly as the shadow described. Jonah's knees buckled. He collapsed to the stones, the ledger slipping from his grip. Gasps rippled across the crowd. Carla dropped beside him, fumbling for the book, screaming into the rig. "No. Don't you dare believe him. Look at the names. Look at the truth." The shadow's laughter spilled across the city, echoing with the bell. "You see? Even his silence is prophecy. Even his fall is mine." Jonah coughed blood, forcing his eyes open. His hand clawed toward the ledger. With shaking fingers he scrawled across its page. "Not prophecy. Not yet. I will rise." He forced himself upright, blood dripping onto the stone. His voice was ragged, broken, but he lifted the ledger high once more. "Then remember this. If I fall, write my name too. But do not let it belong to him. Let it belong to you. To memory." The bowls thundered again, hesitant at first, then stronger. Mothers lifted them. Children struck them. Dockworkers slammed them until their hands bled. The shadow's voice roared in fury. "You cannot silence prophecy." But Jonah's reply, carried by bowls, by blood, by the city itself, rose to meet him. "Memory endures." The night split in two, prophecy tolling from the bell, memory clanging from the bowls. The war was no longer hidden. It was everywhere. The city did not sleep that night. From the East Quarter to the docks, bowls thundered against walls and cobblestones. Every strike was a defiance, every name shouted into the dark a rejection of silence. Jonah's blood-soaked ledger had become more than a book, it was a banner. The people saw their names written there, and for the first time in years, they believed that memory could outlast fear. But the shadow was not gone. Hidden in the black veins of the tunnels, he pressed cloth to his broken jaw, the taste of iron thick on his tongue. The firelight from above flickered across his scattered pages, fragments of his forged ledger, now smeared with soot and blood. He gathered them with trembling hands, holding each ruined scrap as if it were scripture. The bell tolled once, deep and heavy. He closed his eyes, letting the vibration roll through his ribs. "They think memory saves them," he whispered. His voice rasped, broken, but a smile bent across his bloodied lips. "But prophecy is not paper. It is echo. And echo always returns." His followers, cloaked in smoke and ash, knelt around him. Some bled from shattered bowls, others from bullet wounds, but their eyes never wavered. To them, his broken jaw was not defeat, it was sacrifice, fulfillment of a verse written long before. "Rise," he commanded. "The city believes it has broken the iron hand. Let them taste triumph. Let them raise bowls." And then, he raised a shard of his forged ledger, ink smeared like blood. "We turn their memory into prophecy. Their noise into my echo." The bell tolled again, louder this time. Above ground, Jonah staggered through the streets, supported by Naya and Carla. His shoulder burned, every breath a blade, but he refused to let the ledger drop. Around him, the East Quarter had erupted into a carnival of defiance. Fires blazing in braziers, bowls clanging in rhythm, children chanting his name like a song. Naya spat blood and grinned. "You see? They're with us now. The iron hand cracked tonight." Carla adjusted her rig, sparks still leaping from its ruined coils. "But the bell's still ringing." "He's not finished." Jonah's face hardened. "Then neither are we." He raised the ledger, blood dripping across the cover. "As long as one page remains, so does memory." The crowd cheered, bowls thundered. But in the distance, another sound began to grow. A chant. Low at first, carried on the night wind. Then louder. Then multiplied, echoing from alleys and rooftops. "Prophecy returns. Prophecy returns." The noise cut through the rhythm of bowls like a blade. People faltered, glancing over shoulders. Some lowered their bowls, faces pale. Jonah froze. He knew that voice, even distorted by smoke and speakers hidden across the city. The shadow was speaking again. In the tunnels, the shadow's followers dragged huge metal horns into place, ancient relics of the bell's network, long buried but never destroyed. Smoke curled around them as they connected wires, sparks lighting the dark. The shadow leaned close, his voice spilling like poison into the channels. "You saw him bleed. You saw him fall. The ledger is no memory, it is prophecy, and it has spoken. His wound, his collapse, his blood upon the stone, it was all written." The bell tolled, punctuating his words, shaking glass across the city. Crowds faltered. Some who had cheered Jonah now whispered in fear. Mothers pulled children back from the firelight. Soldiers in the north straightened, eyes darting to their commanders. Naya slammed her crutch against the stones, shouting, "Don't listen. He twists what you saw." But doubt spread faster than defiance. The bowls struck softer, some falling silent altogether. Jonah felt the weight of every gaze turned back to him. His chest ached, his blood dripped steadily, and the ledger felt heavier than iron. Carla grabbed his arm. "You have to speak. Now. Before he drowns them again." Jonah raised the ledger, voice cracking but fierce. "The shadow lies. These pages were written by your hands, not his. Your names, your blood, your screams, memory not prophecy." For a heartbeat, bowls clanged louder again. But then the bell thundered, shaking the earth, and the shadow's voice returned, deeper, triumphant. "Then why does he bleed where the ledger foretold? Why does he fall where the bell decreed? Every drop of his blood proves prophecy, not memory." The city gasped. All eyes returned to Jonah, bloodied, staggering, wounded exactly as the shadow described. Jonah's knees buckled. He collapsed to the stones, the ledger slipping from his grip. Gasps rippled across the crowd. Carla dropped beside him, fumbling for the book, screaming into the rig. "No. Don't you dare believe him. Look at the names. Look at the truth." The shadow's laughter spilled across the city, echoing with the bell. "You see? Even his silence is prophecy. Even his fall is mine." Jonah coughed blood, forcing his eyes open. His hand clawed toward the ledger. With shaking fingers he scrawled across its page. "Not prophecy. Not yet. I will rise." He forced himself upright, blood dripping onto the stone. His voice was ragged, broken, but he lifted the ledger high once more. Then remember this. If I fall, write my name too. But do not let it belong to him. Let it belong to you. To memory. The bowls thundered again, hesitant at first, then stronger. Mothers lifted them. Children struck them. Dockworkers slammed them until their hands bled. The shadow's voice roared in fury. You cannot silence prophecy. But Jonah's reply, carried by bowls, by blood, by the city itself, rose to meet him. Memory endures. The night split in two, prophecy tolling from the bell, memory clanging from the bowls. The war was no longer hidden. It was everywhere. The square was fire. Flames climbed banners, torches lay shattered, rifles barked into smoke. The bowls thundered still, but every strike was swallowed by screams. Jonah dragged himself upright against a toppled pillar, ledger pressed to his chest. His blood dripped onto the stones, feeding the red river running between cobblestones. Across the square, the shadow stood among his cloaked followers. His jaw hung broken, his body battered, yet his eyes blazed with a fever that no wound could dim. Around him, the prisoners he had dragged forward were forced again into a circle, knives gleaming at their throats. Enough noise, he bellowed through blood. Enough bowls. Tonight, prophecy writes in blood. The right will bind this city forever. His followers roared, slamming knives into the ground around the circle. Torches hissed, forming a ring of fire. Jonah staggered forward, voice raw. You take lives and call it destiny, but it's murder, nothing more. The shadow spread his arms wide, cloak dripping blood. Murder? His laugh cracked like broken glass. No. Witness the blood rite, the covenant of prophets. Every drop spilled here feeds the bell, and the bell feeds eternity. You cannot silence eternity. The bell tolled. The sound was deeper than before, a vibration that shook the marrow of every bone. The ground cracked, dust falling like ash from rooftops. People stumbled, clutching their ears. Even the bowls faltered, their rhythm breaking as fear gnawed at courage. Carla clutched her ruined rig, sparks still sputtering. He's channeling through the bell, she shouted. Every drop he spills, he's twisting into echo. Naya swung her crutch at a zealot, blood splattering her face. Then we cut his throat before he finishes. She charged, but from the smoke new figures emerged. Cloaked, taller than the rest, their hoods lined in silver thread. Their knives were longer, curved, ceremonial. They moved with the precision of wardens but the fervor of zealots. The crowd recoiled. Someone whispered, "The Watchers." Jonah's chest clenched. He had heard the name in fragments, rumors scrawled in the margins of the ledger. The Watchers were not just followers, they were the Shadow's priests, keepers of the rites. The tallest of them lowered her hood. A woman's face, sharp and scarred, eyes like polished obsidian. She raised her knife, its blade etched with 3 interlocking keys. Prophecy demands blood, she intoned. The city will kneel. Jonah staggered forward, ledger raised. Then it kneels to memory, not to you. The Watcher's gaze cut to him. For the first time, the shadow stepped back, bowing his head slightly as if in reverence. This woman was no mere follower. She was something more. She smiled faintly. You carry the ledger. You bleed for it. Perhaps you do not yet understand, you are part of prophecy too. Jonah froze. Her words slid into his chest like a blade. Carla screamed, "Don't listen." She twists the truth like him. But doubt flickered in Jonah's mind. He remembered every wound, every fall, every time the shadow's words seemed to match his blood. What if the ledger wasn't memory? What if it had always been prophecy, and he had simply carried it to fulfill the words? The Watcher's knife gleamed in firelight. Come closer, and I will show you what you were always meant to be. Naya grabbed Jonah's arm, snarling. Don't you dare. You're not theirs. Jonah gritted his teeth, blood dripping into his eyes. He raised the ledger, slamming it open to a blood-stained page. I was not written by you. I write myself. The Watcher's smile only widened. Then bleed more. We'll see whose ink is stronger. She slashed her knife across a prisoner's throat. Red sprayed across the stones, pooling toward the circle's center. The bell thundered, so loud it shattered windows across the square. Fire leapt higher, feeding on blood. The shadow's voice rose in triumph. The rite begins. Blood for prophecy. Silence for the city. The bowls faltered. People screamed, some scattering into alleys. For the first time, memory seemed weak before the tide of prophecy. Jonah's knees buckled. His chest heaved. He felt the ledger burning in his hands, pages searing like fire. He thought of the vow in the tunnels, the names written, the lives hanging in the balance. He staggered into the circle of blood. His voice broke, but it carried. Then take mine instead. He slashed his other hand wide, blood pouring onto the ledger, dripping into the red pool at the circle's center. The watcher's eyes widened as the book blazed with light, ink and blood fusing, names glowing like fireflies. On every screen across the city the image burned. Jonah, blood pouring, ledger glowing, standing against the watcher's knives. Carla screamed into her rig. See it? His blood is truth. Not prophecy, truth. Naya struck down a zealot, crutch-shattering bone, and planted herself between Jonah and the shadow. You'll have to kill me first. The bowls rose again, furious, deafening, drowning the bell's thunder. The watcher hissed, rage twisting her scar. This isn't over. The rite will finish. You will bleed, boy, until you fulfill every word. The bell tolled again, weaker this time, clashing against the storm of bowls. The shadow's grin cracked, his broken jaw dripping. For the first time, his eyes flickered with doubt. Jonah scrawled into the ledger, blood smearing across the page. Blood spilled. Rite begun. But memory answered. People saw. The watchers pulled back into the smoke, dragging the shadow with them. Their torches vanished into tunnels, their chants fading but not gone. Jonah collapsed to his knees, ledger pressed tight. His blood ran into the stones, mingling with the prisoners. He knew the war wasn't over. The blood rite had begun, and the city had only seen its first drop. But for now the bowl still thundered. And memory endured. The fire in the square burned until dawn. Ash drifted down like gray snow. The stones were slick with blood, some blackened by torchlight, others still wet and red. The captives who survived huddled together in silence, eyes hollow, refusing to speak. The bowls, so loud in the night, now lay dented and cracked, their thunder reduced to scattered clinks. Jonah sat slumped against the steps of a ruined shrine, the ledger across his lap. His blood had dried in jagged streaks across its spine. Each breath rattled his ribs, each blink burned. He had written until his hand cramped, scrawling names and lines in his own blood to prove that memory still lived. But as the sky paled, doubt gnawed at him. Because even now the bell tolled. Not loud, just faint, distant, but relentless. Every toll a reminder that the shadow still breathed, that his prophecy was not broken. In the east quarter, people gathered in alleys, whispering. Some bowed their heads toward Jonah's image, still flickering weakly on a handful of screens, seeing in him the keeper of their names, the boy who bled so they would not. They struck bowls softly, mournfully, a ritual of defiance. But in the north, soldiers muttered different words. He bleeds where the ledger foretold, they said. The bell named him. His suffering proves prophecy. To them, Jonah was not a rebel but a puppet of fate, a tool in the shadow's hand whether he willed it or not. And in the council chambers the Iron Hand's commanders argued. Some wanted to crush Jonah and his followers at once, claiming he endangered the city's order. Others whispered that if prophecy truly spoke through him, perhaps he should be used, shaped, controlled, made into a symbol that served the council's needs. The city was breaking, not in silence but in belief. Carla slammed her rig onto the shrine steps, sparks spitting across the stones. Her face was streaked with soot, her eyes bloodshot from exhaustion. We can't hold them like this, she muttered. Half the city's with us, half against. And every time the bell tolls it pulls more away. Naya leaned on her crutch, scars split open from the fight, but her grin was sharp. Then we make them choose. No more alleys, no more tunnels. We take the fight to the streets, broad daylight, bowls against rifles. Show them memory doesn't hide. Jonah's voice was raw, a whisper. And how many die when we do? How many names will I write in here because I asked them to bleed? Carla's hands shook as she adjusted the coils, staring at him. They'll bleed either way. The difference is whether it's for truth, or for prophecy. The ledger felt heavy in his lap. Jonah opened it, staring at the pages warped with blood. His own handwriting blurred in the margins, smeared by his wounds, blood spilled. Rite begun. But memory answered. He whispered, more to himself than to the others, and if they're right? If prophecy isn't his but mine? Silence pressed in. Naya's crutch thudded against the stones. She crouched in front of him, her scarred face inches from his. Listen to me, boy. Prophecy is chains. Memory is choice. If you start thinking you were written into his story, then he's already won. Jonah closed the ledger with trembling hands. Her words settled into his chest like fire and ash. By midday the fractures showed. In the east quarter, bowls rang like bells of war, banners painted with names draped from windows. Dockworkers marched openly through the streets, chanting Jonah's words, "Noise belongs to the people." But in the north, the Watcher's zealots moved among the people, whispering that Jonah's blood proved the ledger's verse, that his pain only confirmed the shadow's dominion. Mothers lit candles not for memory but for prophecy, begging the bell to name their children safe. The council's guards patrolled in double lines, their faces hidden, their insignias painted over. No one knew which side they favored. The city was no longer one. It was two, and both called themselves truth. That night, Jonah sat alone inside the ruins of the shrine. The ledger lay open on his knees, its pages whispering in the wind. Every name seemed to stare back at him. He dipped his quill in his blood again, writing across the margin with shaking hand. City breaks. Half for memory. Half for prophecy. Both believe in me. His eyes closed, exhaustion dragging him into fevered half-sleep. In his dream, he stood in the cavern once more, bowls clanging like thunder. But the shadow stood beside him, jaw whole, eyes bright. They both held the ledger, their hands locked over it. "You see," the shadow whispered. "You write memory, I write prophecy. But the book is the same." Jonah jerked awake, breath ragged. The ledger glowed faintly in the moonlight, as if the dream had seeped into waking. Carla stirred nearby, watching him with weary eyes. "You're shaking," she said softly. Jonah swallowed, closing the book. "Because I don't know if I'm keeping memory alive, or giving prophecy exactly what it wants." Outside the bell tolled again. Bowls answered, but not as one. The city was divided. And Jonah knew the next blow would decide not just who ruled, but what was true. The night broke beneath fire. At first it was only smoke, curling above the rooftops of Samarkand's archives. Then came the roar, the kind that split stone and memory alike. A tower of flame clawed into the sky, red against the stars, sparks scattering like meteors. People across the city froze. Bowls clattered to the ground. Mothers lifted children, their eyes wide with dread. Jonah felt the tremor before he saw the fire. He stood on the shrine steps, the ledger heavy in his hands, and the blast's echo rolled through his bones. Carla staggered beside him, rig sparking weakly, while Naya leaned on her crutch, her scar gleaming in the firelight. "The archives," Carla whispered, horror breaking her voice. "The records, the scrolls, everything." The flames consumed centuries. Shelves, manuscripts, stone carvings, all fed to the inferno. Soldiers tried to douse it, but the fire hissed unnaturally as if water itself recoiled from prophecy. And then the bell tolled. It shook the ash from the heavens. It rattled bones. The fire bent with its rhythm, flaring higher with each peal. From the flames, voices rose, echoing from hidden horns across the city. The shadow's words, ragged but triumphant. "The second fire has come. The ledger spoke it and now it burns. Memory is ash, prophecy alone endures." Crowds screamed. Some fell to their knees in prayer, whispering the shadow's name as savior. Others struck bowls frantically, desperate to drown his voice, but the bell thundered over them. Jonah's chest ached. He staggered forward, staring at the inferno. No, not the archives. Not memory. Carla's hands shook as she clutched her rig. "He chose the one place that proved us. Records, histories, names written long before his lies. He's erasing memory itself." Naya spat into the dirt, knuckles white around her crutch. "Then we drag him from the fire and break him." But Jonah could not move. His legs were stone. In the flames he saw not only scrolls and records, but his father's notes, the names of ancestors, the very proof that memory could outlast prophecy. All turned to smoke before his eyes. The bell tolled again and the shadow's voice cracked like thunder. "You bled, Jonah. You wrote. But prophecy devours even you. The second fire was always written. And soon, the third." The words echoed down every street, carried into every ear. Even in the East Quarter, where bowls thundered, people faltered. Even in the docks, where defiance had spread, men dropped their bowls in fear. The city split wider, its fracture now a chasm. Jonah fell to his knees, the ledger open on the stones. His blood smeared across its pages as he scrawled with trembling hand. Archives burned. Memory consumed. Shadow claims prophecy. But truth? His quill broke. He stared at the page, ink and blood mingling. For the first time the words would not come. Naya crouched beside him, gripping his shoulder. "Write it. Write anything. Don't let him silence you." Jonah looked up, the fire reflected in his eyes. "If memory itself burns, what's left to write?" Carla's voice was raw, whispering into her broken rig. "You. As long as you bleed, as long as you speak, Memory still breathes. The book isn't dead unless you are. The bell tolled again, drowning them. But this time, something changed. Through the smoke, a figure appeared on the rooftop opposite. Cloaked in indigo, veiled face hidden, eyes burning like coals. The Watcher woman, the one who had spoken to Jonah during the blood rite. She raised her hand, and for a moment the bell's toll faltered. The flames hissed, bending as though listening. Her voice cut across the square, calm but commanding. The second fire is not his alone. It was written, but not ended. Seek the mountain, Jonah. Seek the spring. Their memory will decide if it lives or dies. Then, as suddenly as she appeared, she was gone, swallowed by smoke. Jonah staggered upright, clutching the ledger. Who was she? Carla shook her head, eyes wide. Watcher. But not like the rest. She broke the bell, if only for a breath. Naya's jaw clenched. Or she wants you to believe she did. Another chain, another prophecy. You can't trust her. Jonah stared at the flames consuming the archives. His heart pounded. Her words rang in his chest like the bowls once had. Seek the mountain. Seek the spring. The bell tolled one last time, shaking ash across the city. The shadow's voice followed, whispering through smoke. The second fire has come. The third waits in the mountain. All roads lead to me. Jonah pressed the ledger to his chest. His blood seeped into its pages, the ink burning under his touch. He whispered into the night, voice broken but certain. Then we'll meet him there. The bowls struck once more, faint but steady, echoing into the dawn. Chapter 4 ended in fire, smoke, and a question that no ledger could yet answer. And far beyond the city walls, the mountains waited, silent, ancient, hiding springs older than prophecy, older than memory itself.